So here's a fun question. What if I told you that for the last 20 years, we've been sitting on the technology to measure trust, and it just didn't work? Yeah, sentiment analysis. Remember that? We were going to read the emotional temperature of all of our social media audiences, understand how they felt about us and our products and our brands, and make a bunch of more smart decisions because of it. And we tried it, and it was basically a fail, right? It was basically a coin flip with a marketing budget. I mean, it was positive, then it was negative, then it was positive, then it was negative, then it was smiley faces, then it was sad faces. All of it not terribly helpful. But what if I told you the technology is finally caught up? And by the way, we're still using it to count those clicks and yeses and nos. That's what we're going to fix today. So welcome back. I'm Robert Rose. This is part 4, the final installment of the Content Marketing Measurement series. And if you've stuck with me through all four parts of this, the series on this about measurement, well, I just kind of want to acknowledge you for a minute. I see you, right? You're a very specific kind of person, a little nerdy, let's be honest, but I do appreciate you deeply for sticking with me with this, especially as I try and work this thing out in real time here. Quick recap for anybody who's jumping in late to this. In part 1, that was the first week of March, I introduced this idea called the Audience Trust Index. It's kind of like a stethoscope for taking the emotional temperature of your audience. Are they warm to you? Are they lukewarm? Are they actively pretending like your story doesn't exist? In part 2, I introduced this idea of the Trust Lattice Framework. So it was a way to start to map, to score, if you will, the depth and breadth of your audience relationships as it pertains to trust. 4 sides and 4 levels gives us a scoring system, and 0 to 10, and it can be anything you want, really. I used 0 to 10. And then in part 3, last week, we got into the actual signal clusters, the scores, right? How do you score each of those sides? What do you look for? And I ran the framework given a very light little AI agent that I created on my own personal brand and the idea of content marketing measurement, and then published those results because, well, apparently I enjoy really, public accountability, as it were. Anyway, all of this brings us to the question I've been teasing for 3 weeks, which is, okay, who and how does this work actually get done? Because let's get real for a second. Aggregating sentiment across LinkedIn comments, Reddit threads, newsletter replies, and community forums, tracking citation behavior, auditing whether your sales team's emails match the tone of your thought leadership, monitoring whether your audience is quietly escalating from passive readers to active advocates across all the multiple personas at all 4 levels of depth every single quarter. Phew, that is not a job for your marketing coordinator with a spreadsheet and a dream. It is, however, exactly the kind of job that agentic AI is built to do. And that's what this episode is all about. New technology, new ways of doing this that now have caught up with our ability to want to do it. So, sentiment analysis. Let's talk about why it failed and why it works now. So 25 years ago, we were terrified of Agent Smith plugging into our brains and harvesting our body's poor power. Yeah, you remember The Matrix, right? So in 2026, we're practically begging Agent Smith to plug into our Gmail so he can harvest our data and write a polite, hey, per my last email to our client. The Matrix didn't need to trap us in a vat of goo. It just needed to offer a Chrome extension, basically, that summarizes meeting notes. Anyway, here's a serious version of that joke. The reason sentiment analysis didn't work back in the day, is because the technology was basically reading one word at a time and guessing. Cold, is that bad? I don't know. Are we talking about soup or a beer? Transformers have changed all of that. Transformers, by the way, the T in ChatGPT. Now the machine can read the whole sentence at once. It's been trained on billions of human conversations. It can grasp that, oh great, another software update is not actually enthusiasm. It can separate how someone feels from what they want. It can tell you whether your audience is frustrated, curious, resigned, or genuinely excited across languages and across platforms at scale. So we've gone from counting happy words and the smiley faces and sad faces to being able to understand emotional subtext. We are basically, we've gone from a toddler recognizing a smiley face and a sad face to a psychologist that can actually read the room pretty well. So the tech, it works now. Great. But the other half of the problem is scale, of course. The sheer number of channels and surfaces where your audience is talking about you or not talking about you, makes doing this thing manually impossible. And that brings us to this big shift. For decades, our CRM systems barely lived up to the relationship management part of their name. I mean, let's be honest. They were basically big filing cabinets, expensive, cloud-hosted, filled filing cabinets. Data goes in, reports come out. Data goes in, reports come out. Everything in between was a human with a query and basically a hope. Agentic CRM is a little different. It doesn't wait to be asked, it can listen. So traditional MarTech was built to count clicks, opens, form fills, pipeline stages, downloads, reactive infrastructure for a transactional world. The trust lattice that we're building needs technology that can actually interpret, read the emotional tenor of a comment thread, notice that a whole cohort just shifted from passive reading to active participation, detect that our newsletter sounds like a completely different brand than our sales follow-up. That's the evolution from generative AI, which creates content and, maybe good, maybe bad, maybe not, to agentic AI, which autonomously acts on signals. You see, generative AI lets us speak at scale. Agentic can let us listen at scale. But, and I cannot stress this enough, the same caveat applies to both. Quality, right? That quality content that we're generating with generative AI is doing a whole lot of work in both of those sentences. Listen without judgment, that's just noise collection. You've got to have a human, not just in the loop, but is the loop, right? The human is the loop in deciding what good even looks like. So let me walk through what this actually looks like and possibly could look like for each side of the lattice that we want to work with, right? So one, that shared sentiment score. Well, this is the natural fit, right? Natural language processing already reads tone and emotional register across LinkedIn or Reddit or newsletters or your forums. The agent doesn't just count the comments, it reads them for recognition versus dismissal. And that breakthrough isn't just accuracy, it's continuity. Instead of a quarterly assessment, you get sort of a rolling reading as you go on here, a weather report, not a weather guess. Then second, we've got reciprocal utility. Remember that one, the value one. Agents can track whether your content is being cited, whether it's being bookmarked, whether it's being referenced in AI-generated answers, and they monitor that to return to content rates. In other words, they can connect the signals to your return to the how-to paper to the specific persona and level in your lattice. Isolated data points become a pattern. Patterns then become that score. Then the third is the predictable governance. Now, this one still absolutely needs humans because it needs an audit. But agents can crawl your surfaces, whether it's your website, your blog, your email newsletter, whatever it is, and they can start to flag inconsistencies and give you targeted areas to audit. Think of it kind of like a spell check for your brand experience. It's not going to tell you what your brand should sound like, but it can tell you where it doesn't sound like itself. Then last is that proximity signal. Remember, I called this the loud clue. This is where it gets really fun because agents can track engagement escalation, actions, actually do some counting. Are people moving from reading to commenting to sharing with their buying committee? Is time with experts, the time on your podcast, the time in your webinars, is that going up or is that going down? Is reputation lending, people putting their own credibility on the line to recommend you? Is that accelerating or is that stalling? These are the loud clues, the actions that we can start to track that give us a clue that good things or not so good things are happening. They were always there, we just didn't really have anything listening for them. Now, if all that still sounds a little esoteric, here's the honest part. This is still early, and I want to say that very clearly. Most organizations that use AI agents today are still using them to schedule meetings and route leads, maybe in a slightly more automated way than we had before. The jump from agent that fills out a form to agent that reads the emotional climate of a CFO cohort, it is a significant jump. I don't want to discount that. Only 21% of organizations have full visibility into what their agents are actually doing now. So we don't need to just create more agents for the sake of doing that, because 1 in 5 have deployed agents with zero guardrails. Remember, Agents can drift. We can hallucinate. They can hallucinate a sentiment score. And a bad score doesn't just sit there, it cascades. And so I want people to come into this with their eyes open here of what I'm suggesting here of using AI to be able to do this. As George Box said, all models are wrong. The question is whether they ultimately become useful. And hopefully what I've built across this series is not just a turnkey product that you can turn on and set it and forget it. There is no platform that you can buy currently that scores your lattice by Friday. This is kind of a way of thinking, a diagnostic and foundational framework that you can use, hopefully, to customize, to test, to rework for your organization. Here's what I do know. The organizations that get the most out of this kind of diagnostic won't be the ones that deploy the most agents the fastest. They'll be the ones that do the foundational work, define the lattice criteria, build the content strategy baseline, use agents to extend human judgment, not replace it. Oh, and one more thing, the who. Well, there's a new role showing up in job postings that I've been noticing. Some of them, people are calling it the GTM or go-to-market engineer. So the idea that this, by the way, postings for this kind of position have grown 200% year over year. And what this person does is kind of exactly what I'm describing could be done for your content marketing team. They don't pull reports. They don't just look at analytics. They start architecting the systems that can listen and actually go out there and give you the insight to go to market better. That's the future of marketing operations. Not let's look at what happened last quarter so that we can alter our behavior for next quarter, but what's happening right now in the emotional climate of our audience and what should we do about it right now, not tomorrow. Agents can handle the scale, humans handle the judgment. That's the deal. So, 4 weeks, 4 parts. We started this series with a provocation. The metrics we've been using for 20 years are insufficient in content marketing measurement. Attention is hyperinflated. Clicks don't mean trust. We know that. Downloads don't mean loyalty. We know that. And the sheer volume of AI-generated content has made the old game of counting eyeballs, well, almost meaningless these days. Then we spent 3 weeks building and trying to build maybe something different. A stethoscope to listen to trust, a lattice work to map it, signal clusters to score it, and now agents to actually operate it. I opened today by asking, what if we've been sitting on the technology to measure trust and it just hasn't worked? The answer is, yeah, that's exactly what happened. It didn't work. And now maybe it can, not perfectly, not turnkey, but well enough that the question is no longer, can we measure trust? But it's, are we willing to do the work to measure it? Remember, my own lattice scored a 5 on proximity at the advocacy level. That number told me more about my content strategy than years of Google Analytics would. And it's the reason I ended up writing this series in the first place. What we've built here is not a dashboard. It's not a funnel. It's a diagnostic discipline, a way of asking over and over and over again, how healthy is our relationship with our audience and what should we do about it? Thanks for sticking with me through all 4 parts. The full article is linked in the post below. And basically, with all the research, all the citations, the detail, the 4 sides, go read it, bookmark it, argue with it, argue with me. Let me know how it's working for you. And if this series has been useful, if any of these ideas have helped you think differently about how you might just start measuring the work you do, share it with someone who needs to hear it, because that would mean a lot. See what I did there? See what I did? Anyway, it's your story. The agents are listening, and we can figure out how they might help us tell it a little better. I'll see you next week.